All right. Today was, well, actually, yesterday was my first full day in Porto, Portugal. I had the first day when I went out seeking game shops and other nerdy pleasures. And yesterday turned into mostly a tourist kind of day well, almost not a tourist day because I didn't go to tourist things like go to castles and churches and that kind of thing. I just walked around town a lot, and it was a bit of a redemption arc for Portugal. But before I get into that, I did find one nerdy thing today, and so I'll put that right up front in case the rest of you don't want to watch the rest of this video. This one might be for my own edifice for later when I'm older and want to remember my trip. Anyway, I did find this billboard for their what looks to be the big gaming convention. So I thought it was pretty cool. I didn't think of this. I think most large cities have gaming conventions, but this seems to be Porto. So voila, that was about the extent of it, unless you consider just looking at a beautiful city to be nerdy, which to a certain extent I do because it's a love of history I think is innate within that. So anyway, as I said, the morning was a bit of a redemption arc for Portugal, or for Porto, not for Portugal, for Porto, because I wasn't super impressed day one. I described it as gritty. That seemed right for day one. But this morning was Saturday morning, and Saturdays they raise these little pillars, these little metallic pillars up and shut off a lot of the roads, and so there were a lot of pedestrian areas where there were no cars for walking around, and the Portuguese were out in force, so there was a lot of folks walking around, plus a lot of tourists. It was weird though. I had heard that American tourists were maybe negatively viewed in Portugal or something like that because there were so many. Definitely not a lot of American tourists out. I heard more German than I did English. There was, I would say, a variety. There were a lot of tourists, but I don't think Americans are the overpopulating problem right now. Matter of fact, I started to get excited the few times I actually heard English, even if it was English instead of American English. I think I spoke to one person all day, and that was just a few comments about pizza. So anyway, but it was very cool. It was old and pretty. There's like two levels of Porto. There's the river level, and then there's where I'm staying, which is a little higher up. And there's definitely some altitude difference between the two. Like you decide, like, do I want to leave the river? Because I'm not coming back if I do, because it's a climb. So I really enjoyed what I saw. There was this cool market, and it was sort of a two-story affair where you came in on kind of a upper level, and you could obviously overlook the market, and it looked pretty cool. But once you got down there, man, there was some cool stuff. And there were touristy things, but there were definitely locals shopping there for food, and it wasn't like cheap stuff. It was like chocolate with Porto on it or something like that, but it wasn't, like T-shirts and little magnets and that kind of thing. And there was just so many good foods, and whether it was pastries or sausages, or I had the only thing I got there was a mango orange drink, which was outstanding. It was just a little juice thing. I was just getting kind of thirsty, and so I bought that. Wow, that was good. Really, and I picked the mango orange because there were the fewest of them left. It looked like they'd kind of sold out of a lot of that. I'm like, that's probably a pretty good one. Yes, it was. It was excellent. So I had that. In retrospect, I wish I had gotten more. There were some excellent meat and cheese platters where it would be like a cheese shop, but then they clearly knew that some people weren't there for a wheel of cheese, and so they would have this little cut, salamis and cheese, and oh, it looked so good, and I wish I'd got some. But I didn't know what the plan was for the day. Turned out it would be another 3 or 4 hours before I had anything, and that anything was tea. But that's a longer story. For now, I am absolutely charmed by this little market. I still might go back today and get some more there. But I left the market and ended up going down into the river district, which is the old town, near as I can tell. And it was very charming, very pretty. I had said yesterday that Porto wasn't maybe as pretty in a historic sense as I had expected, but it was once I found the right area. I'm just not in a historic area. It's older. It's clearly older, but it's not the ultra old. And you can always tell, like when there's little alleyways that were clearly built before cars existed. Then you're in the old town. And I found an abundance of those. Found so many, there were neat little shops. I didn't really do any shopping. I was kind of out to stretch my legs, and I ended up going for about a 2-hour walk. Saw some neat stuff, but I was just enjoying the ambiance of a really pretty part of Porto. And I came out of that 2-hour walk thinking, yeah, a guy could live here. I think my first half day here, I was not super impressed and wasn't thinking, oh, this is a place I would want to live. But after the morning walk, I was like, yeah, this is a pretty nice place. One of the cooler things to do, they've got it's actually like a double-decker bridge. I should find the name of it here. Let me see if I can pull it up. It's a double-decker bridge over the River Douro, which is a very big, it's a significant European river, and it is very pretty, as you can see. It's the Ponta Luís the first Ponta Luís bridge, but it's 2 levels, and so I'm down in the river level of the city, right? And enjoying that, and I can see way up there. There's the higher level where there's a lot more traffic in terms of trains and automobiles. Definitely train traffic. In retrospect, all I remember were the trains, but the trains were frighteningly close to the people, and I was one of the people. They weren't frightening. I never felt at risk. But it was one of those things where, I'm not as coordinated as I used to be. Like, if I had tripped and fallen, there were tracks right there. And there were a fair number of people because it was a Saturday. It was beautiful. I think there were a lot of tourists out as well. And so I walked over on this lower level, which was also very pretty, and you can see. And then I got to the other side, and I had the decision to make. Right? Do I go from river level up and take the upper level back? And the River Douro is so pretty that I just decided I should. I mean, on paper, this looks amazing because you got this large river going out to the ocean. You've got the old city there. I mean, yeah. So I decided I would do the hike up. It was a hike. I have video and photos of it. It does not capture it. There are places when you're going from river level up where there'll be a walkway with a handrail the whole way up or down, depending on how you look at it. Probably further down, actually, to keep your balance. Even the stairs are sloped. One of the things I noticed about Porto is they use a lot of slopes where normally I would expect stairs. But sometimes there's stairs, and the stairs are even sloped because it's so steep. So I can understand why people say that Porto, it's a good one for your go-go years of retirement before you run into mobility issues. Twice today almost rolled an ankle. I didn't hurt myself, but definitely got my attention, and I was like, watch where you're walking, because it's not level surfaces to start with, right? A lot of cobblestone, but then once in a while there'll be a cobblestone missing, or they do a lot of tile type stuff here, both on the houses, which are beautiful, but also just on the streets, and sometimes those tiles, there'll be one missing, and you got to watch yourself that way. So in addition to the altitude gain, it's not smooth sailing, we'll call it, all the time on the paths themselves. Plus, you've got these, you're often at some sort of angle or slant. Even if you're on stairs going up and down, they're still often angled. I have the urge to show you with my body, but that's probably not good videography. All right. So came back, did the big up. There's a kind of a castle up there. Like I said, I didn't go in any of the stuff. I wasn't in tourist mode. I was wanting to just experience the city and get a feel for it. Went over on the top part of the Ponte Luis Bridge. Gorgeous views, gorgeous. I mean, highly recommend. It's worth the walk, even if you do the walk in stages. There's a lot of clever advertising from cafes and stuff like, hey, you still got a long way to go, maybe stop in and get a drink. I actually had this great idea. Kind of wish I had done it. Like, it was a long, very steep climb, and stopping in and having taking a break, getting a beverage, whatever, seems like not a terrible idea. All right, so I get to the top, walk back across, beautiful views. A lot more ship activity than I was expecting, but I think it's because the Douro is a very significant waterway. I mean, it's wide. I'm not a nautical guy. I live in a very landlocked place, but it seemed like it was deep and had a lot of river and boat traffic, bigger boats, not just small stuff. And then on the way back, I decided to take some of these really thin alleyways, and it was funny. You'd be walking down these really thin alleyways, and there'd just be like houses, kind of boring. You're like, maybe I made a mistake here. I don't even know. This could dead end, for all I know. And then you'd open out, and there'd be like a little cafe, a pretty little cafe in the middle of this area. So, and I say area, in the middle of this winding, thin alleyway. And then it would go back to being a windy, thin alleyway. So I came back from that 2-hour walk and just thought, wow, this place has more charm than I was giving it credit for. So I need to record a video and give Porto its dues, because it can be a very charming place on a Saturday morning walk. And ended up going back, taking a nap because of the whole sleep deprivation thing of the trip over, time change, blah, blah, blah. Took about a 3-hour nap, and then decided I wanted to go on another long walk, and chose to walk down the river to the ocean. This is really going to be one of the few areas I'm going to get a chance to see the Atlantic Ocean. Most of my other places I'm going, like Evora, Coimbra, Braga, don't have oceanfront. So this is my chance. I wanted to see the ocean. So I decided to walk along the river to the ocean for my afternoon walk. We're back to gritty. Like I said before, on paper, this looks gorgeous. Big river opening up into the Atlantic Ocean. How could it not be a wonderful walk? It was all walkable, but I would not say it was pleasant. It was a lot of... It's hard to describe. Maybe I've got some photos here where you can kind of see what's along the side there. But it's not cafes and interesting shops and that sort of thing. It's businesses, some looking more industrial than anything else. Like, it's not a pretty walk. Going from close to that bridge, I just kind of went back to the river, so I'm just a little west of the Ponte Luis Bridge, and then I walked to the ocean, and I would say for 90% of that walk, I was shocked that there wasn't more there. Like, how are there not little cafes? Like, for 90% of that walk, I think I saw one cafe and one beer kiosk thing that wasn't even like a permanent structure, but it was very popular for lack of other opportunities. It was fine. There was like some interesting walkaway things. But it was really more about car traffic, a lot of car traffic, buses, trams, that sort of. It was just kind of more of a way to get from point A to point B, but not intended for maybe tourists and people who are looking to just sit and enjoy the views, that sort of thing. There weren't a lot of those. There were very, very few of those places. Again, I can remember one. Probably means there were two because I'm old. But I can only really remember one where I thought, maybe I should stop here. It's been a while since I saw something interesting. I'm like, nah, I'm probably, the closer I get to the ocean, the better it'll get. And then it was, again, I didn't see anything till I got to that last 10%. Then it got to more what I was expecting, which was nice walking paths, kind of separate from the traffic, so you didn't feel like you were right next to the cars and the trams. It was, when I say trams, like trolley car type things. Not sure what trolley car is probably the right one where it's running on rail. Anyway, then you started to have, well, for starters, there was a very pretty park. And pretty good size. So this was probably the first moment where I was like, okay, I think this long walk's been worth it. This ended up being about a 4-hour walk. So I ended up with over 40,000 steps. My feet were, my dogs were barking by the time I got back. My feet were hurting. But this park was very pretty. Plus it provided some shade, which I'd been walking out in the sun and unfortunately directly into the sun. And I thought about bringing sunglasses. Oops. I also thought about bringing headphones, which I wish I had done because there wasn't anything to look at. Like, it wasn't, I don't know how you can have that beautiful of a setting and not have more beauty around you. Again, on paper, this looks amazing. In reality, just find some other way to get to the ocean front. The ocean front is pretty good. You've got the ocean. That's nice. You've got this big river, and as I said, there's activity on the river, right? Anything from jet skis to tourist boats, but also a few other boats. You start to see some fishermen there. Usually they'll have like 3 of those like super long poles. I know my maritime expertise is stunning, but they would set out like 3 poles and had these kind of cool mechanisms that would attach them to these railings. It says something that's what I'm like, finally something interesting, fishing poles. It was that kind of walk. And then there's little jetties or piers out into the, I don't know the difference between the two. They're probably piers. Concrete piers out into the ocean with a little lighthouse, concrete block lighthouse. Looks pretty from a distance, but you get close up and you're like, I feel like they just felt like a lighthouse needed to be here. It doesn't look like a function when it's not very tall. It's just cement blocks. Like I've seen, it's one of the least attractive lighthouses I've ever seen. I kind of have a thing for lighthouses because I love the concept of a light, guiding ships and telling them where land is. And I can imagine what it would be like to be on that ship and see the lighthouse. This would have been the last lighthouse I wanted to see, other than the fact that Porto, you're there. And again, there were a few restaurants, but kind of a dearth. Now, part of it was the time. I was at the coast at about an hour before I intended to be. I thought I'd be stopping along the way to get a meal. Turns out there weren't maybe one restaurant along the way, just nothing. And I thought, well, I'll grab a bite here, but the restaurants don't open until 7. So I was trying to catch the sunset over the ocean. It looked like it was going to be pretty. I'm sure it was pretty. I didn't get to see it because I was getting hungry at this point because all I've had is that juice that I got in the morning at the market. That's all I've had. So I'm getting hungry. And I think in the morning I had leftovers of a pastry that I bought the day before. So I've had like a wee bit of food and that juice. And I thought by now I'd stop. I should have stopped in the old town down by the river. That's when I should have stopped. There were a lot of cool restaurants. I just really was looking forward to the sunset, and I thought I'll stop along the way. Turned out to be a bad idea because sunset's around 7. That's also when the restaurant's open, and at that point I'm thinking with my stomach. So I go back into town away from the river to try to find some food. Really not as many options on the way back as I thought. It was very residential. Saw us like nice suburban areas. They seemed very clean. Like I've been describing Porto as gritty. There are areas that seem very clean, very safe to have kids in a family. Probably looked a little on the pricier side, but very nice areas that I was walking through. But they were more residential. Again, restaurants just starting to open up, but there's not much open at 6:30 on a Saturday. Now Porto gets hopping later, but I was hungry. There wasn't much. There was a grocery store I ran across. I thought about that. In retrospect, I wish I'd gone in because I ended up walking back. So I've got another hour of walking, and then I just go to a grocery store and buy a giant thing of tea because I haven't had anything to drink since that juice. Or probably had a glass of water or two before I left on my hike. But at this point, I've been walking for 3 hours without any liquid, so I know I'm dehydrated, and that's affecting my mood and all those sorts of things. So I buy the big thing of tea and end up drinking it on the way home. Don't find a restaurant. There's like McDonald's and that sort of thing, but that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to go to McDonald's. I very much want a local shop. So I ended up coming back to the hotel and then researching where to go out to eat. Found a place that I definitely wanted to go, which now I know I will not go because they aren't open on Sundays or Mondays till I'm gone. So, but found what looked like a nice restaurant. Now, as I mentioned, Porto gets hopping in the evening. So Saturday evening, it's going. So it's like 8:00. I'm going out to finally grab a bite to eat, and all of the restaurants and the pubs there's lines outside, and you can't just find a table. I had heard that you need to book ahead for restaurants. You do. You don't be like me wandering around at 8:00 on a Saturday night looking for food. And 8:00's what, 20:00 for, I don't know how you do it when you're on military time, but 20. It's 8:00 at night. And there's not I end up going to what looks like kind of a cheap and cheesy, no pun intended, pizza joint. But it was actually really good. So I ended up just eating kind of a little off the restaurant drag and more of a shopping area. I think that's why there was a place. It was either this pizza place or right across the street there was a fries place, which seemed like everything was made from fries, which sounds awesome unless you're like a 60-year-old dude with a cholesterol problem. Then it sounds like a nightmare. So I went to the pizza joint. Again, super impressed with the pizza. I even had the world's smallest beer with it. It was, and I ordered a small beer. I'm not much of a drinker, so that's not a complaint. It sounded like a complaint when I heard it after I said it, but it wasn't. I wanted a small beer. Just had a really good meal, and that's where I met that one American that I talked to for like a minute about pizza. That's the thing. There's not a lot of English here. I know I touched on this before. but it's a little isolating. I thought that there would be more people who spoke English. I remember the few shop owners slash restaurant folks I've interacted with have not spoken much English. I thought, probably based on my experiences in other areas in the Netherlands or in Athens, I thought there would be more English spoken. Really hasn't been. I wish I had spent more time learning Portuguese before I came over, but I wasn't going to get conversational in that time frame. So it's been more of a loner experience than I thought it would be, because I'm a chatty guy. Like, I talk to everybody, like at the pizza joint. But it was one of those things where I was leaving right as someone was showing up, and they ordered a salad. I'm like, do you know that the pizza's great here? Because it doesn't look, it looks like a Sbarro kind of place if you've ever been, or that you'd see it like a mall food court, except it was outside in a nicer area. But it has that look. But the pizza was spot on. Like, it was good. So I ended up being pretty happy with how things turned out, even though I wish I had gotten some more traditional Portugal food somewhere in the, I didn't come to Porto thinking the only meal I would dine out would be a pizza joint. That was not what I had on my bingo card. So anyway, that was my day. It wasn't as nerdy as I would have liked. I'll be honest, after that redemption walk in the morning where I'm like, maybe a guy could live in Porto. That was pretty cool. After that river walk and then the walk back, I'm back to, no, not for me. I don't, there's a lot of places in this world. I had heard Portugal was on the cheaper side. It is probably pretty cheap, but it's not that much cheaper than somewhere like the Netherlands, or it's probably on par with Greece in terms of finances. But if I had to pick Athens or Porto, I think I'd pick Athens at the moment as a place to live. So, I'm kind of scouting Europe and just seeing, like, if I lived in Europe, where would I want to live in Europe? I don't think Porto is the answer. I'm really curious to check out a smaller town in Portugal, so I'm going to Braga next. That'll be tomorrow. Really looking forward to see what that looks like. For now, today, I don't know how much. I might not post a video tomorrow. I'm not sure I'm going to get out much. For starters, it's Sunday. Not much is open. Like, trying to find a restaurant I was looking online, and I'm like, well, good thing I bought that granola. It's not a ton open on a Sunday, which I was not expecting. It's a Catholic country, and I think that they still take that pretty seriously. So I was not expecting a lot of restaurant opportunities. It met my expectations. So, all right. So this might be it from Porto, unless I'm sure I will get out and walk if for health reasons, if nothing else, at some point today. So maybe we'll have a shorter video tomorrow. I did a lot of wandering, and so I wanted to capture some of that for future reference. All right. Have a great day, great life, play great games, and we'll catch you later. Bye.